Book 5, Canto 2 of the Faerie Queene. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Jou. The Faerie Queene by Edmund Spenser. Book 5. The Legend of Artegall. Canto 2. Artegall hears a Florimel, does with the pagan fight. Him slays, drowns Lady Munera, does raise her castle quite. Nought is more honourable to a knight, ne better doth beseem brave chivalry, than to defend the feeble in their right, and wrong redress in such as wend awry. Whilome those great heroes got thereby their greatest glory for their rightful deeds, and place deserved with the gods on high. Herein the noblesse of this knight exceeds, who now to perils great for justice sake proceeds. To which as he now was upon the way, he chanced to meet a dwarf in hasty course, whom he required his forward haste to stay, till he of tidings mote with him discourse. Loth was the dwarf, yet did he stay perforce, and gan of sundry newes his store to tell, as to his memory they had recourse. But chiefly of the fairest Florimel, how she was found again, and spoused to Marinell. For this was Donny, Florimel's own dwarf, whom having lost, as ye have heard whilere, and finding in the way the scattered scarf, the fortune of her life long time did fear. But of her health, when Artegall did hear, and safe return, he was full inly glad, and asked him where and when her bridal cheer should be solemnized, for if time he had, he would be there, and honour to her spousal add. Within 3 days, quoth he, as I do hear, it will be at the castle of the Strand. What time, if nought me let, I will be there, to do her service, so as I am bond. But in my way, a little here beyond, a cursed cruel Sarazin doth won, that keeps a bridges passage by strong hand, and many errant knights hath therefore done, that makes all men for fear that passage for to shun. What Mr. Wight, quoth he, and how far hence is he that doth to travellers such harms? He is, said he, a man of great defence, expert in battle and in deeds of arms, and more emboldened by the wicked charms with which his daughter doth him still support, having great lordships got and goodly farms, through strong oppression of his power extort, by which he still them holds, and keeps with strong effort. And daily he his wrongs increaseth more, for never wight he lets to pass that way over his bridge, albe he rich or poor, but he him makes his passage penny pay, else he doth hold him back or beat away. Thereto he hath a groom of evil guise, whose scalp is bare, that bondage doth bewray, which polls and pills the poor in piteous wise, but he himself upon the rich doth tyrannize. His name is hight Polente, rightly so, for that he is so puissant and strong, that with his power he all doth o'ergo, and makes them subject to his mighty wrong, and some by sleight he eke doth underfong. For on a bridge he custometh to fight, which is but narrow, but exceeding long, and in the same are many trapfalls pight, through which the rider down doth fall through oversight. And underneath the same a river flowes, that is both swift and dangerous deep withal, into the which whomso he overthrowes, all destitute of help, doth headlong fall. But he himself, through practice usual, leaps forth into the flood, and there assayes his foe confused through his sudden fall, that horse and man he equally dismayes, and either both them drowns, or traitorously slayes. Then doth he take the spoil of them at will, and to his daughter brings, that dwells thereby, who all that comes doth take, and therewith fill the coffers of her wicked treasury, which she with wrongs hath heaped up so high, that many princes she in wealth exceeds, and purchased all the country lying nigh, with the revenue of her plenteous meeds. Her name is Munera, agreeing with her deeds. Thereto she is full fair and rich attired, with golden hands and silver feet beside, that many lords have her to wife desired, but she them all despiseth for great pride. Now by my life, said he, and God to guide, none other way will I this day betake, but by that bridge, whereas he doth abide. Therefore me thither lead. No more he spake, but thitherward forthright his ready way did make. Unto the place he came within a while, where on the bridge he ready armed saw the Sarazin awaiting for some spoil, who, as they to the passage gan to draw, a villaine to them came with skull all raw, that passage money did of them require, according to the custome of their law. To whom he answered wroth, Lo, there thy hire, and with that word him struck, that straight he did expire. Which when the pagan saw, he wexed wroth, and straight himself unto the fight addressed. Ne was Sir Artegall behind, so both together ran with ready spears in rest, right in the midst, whereas they breast to breast should meet, a trap was letten down to fall into the flood. Straight leapt the carle unblest, well weening that his foe was fall'n withal, but he was well aware, and leapt before his fall. There being both together in the flood, they each at other tyrannously flew, ne aught the water cooled their hot blood, but rather in them kindled choler new. But there the Paynim, who that use well knew to fight in water, great advantage had, that oftentimes him nigh he overthrew, and eke the courser whereupon he rad could swim like a fish, whiles he his back bestrad. Which odds, when as Sir Artegall espied, he saw no way, but close with him in haste, and to him driving strongly down the tide, upon his iron collar gripped fast, that with the straint his wizard nigh he brast. There they together strove and struggled long, either the other from his steed to cast. Ne ever Artegall his gripple strong for anything would slack, but still upon him hung. As when a dolphin and a seal are met in the wide champion of the ocean plain, with cruel chafe their courages they whet, the masterdom of each by force to gain, and dreadful battle twixt them doe darraign. They snuff, they snort, they bounce, they rage, they roar, that all the sea disturbed with their train doth fry with foam above the surges hoar. Such was betwixt these two the troublesome uproar. So Artegall at laft him forced forsake his horfes backe, for dread of being drowned, and to his handy fwimming him betake. Eftfoones himfelfe he from his hold unbound, and then no oddes at all in him he found. For Artegall in fwimming skilfull was, and durft the depth of any water found. So ought each knight, that ufe of peril has, in fwimming be expert, through waters force to pas. Then very doubtfull was the warres event, uncertain whether had the better fide. For both were skilled in that experiment, and both in armes well trained and throughly tride. But Artegall was better breathed beside, and towards the end grew greater in his might, that his faint foe no longer could abide his puiffaunce, ne beare himfelfe upright, but from the water to the land betooke his flight. But Artegall purfued him ftill fo neare with bright Chrifore in his cruell hand, that as his head he gan a little reare above the brinke to tread upon the land, he fmote it off, that tumbling on the ftrand it bit the earth for very fell defpight, and gnafhed with his teeth, as if he banned high God, whofe goodnefle he defpared quite, or curft the hand which did that vengeance on him dight. His corps was carried downe along the lee, whofe waters with his filthy blood it ftayned. But his blasphemous head, that all might see, he pitcht upon a pole on high ordayned, where many yeares it afterwards remayned, to be a mirror to all mighty men, in whofe right hands great power is contayned, that none of them the feeble overren, but alwayes do their power within juft compafle pen. That done, unto the caftle he did wend, in which the Paynims daughter did abide, guarded of many, which did her defend, of whom he entrance fought, but was denyde, and with reprochfull blasphemy defide, beaten with ftones downe from the battlement, that he was forced to withdraw afide, and bad his fervant Talus to invent, which way he enter might without endangerment. Eftfoones his page drew to the caftle gate, and with his iron flaile at it let fly, that all the warders it did fore amate. The which erewhile fpake fo reprochfully, and made them ftoupe, that looked erft fo high. Yet ftill he beat and bounced upon the dore, and thundred ftrokes thereon fo hideoufly, that all the peace he fhaked from the floore, and filled all the houfe with feare and great uprore. With noyfe whereof the Lady forth appeared upon the caftle wall, and when fhe faw the dangerous ftate, in which fhe stood, fhe feared the fad effect of her neare overthrow, and gan entreat that iron man below to ceafe his outrage, and him faire befought, fith neither force of ftones which they did throw, nor powre of charmes which fhe againft him wrought, might otherwife prevaile, or make him ceafe for ought. But when as yet fhe faw him to proceed, unmoved with prayers or with piteous thought, fhe ment him to corrupt with goodly meed, and caufed great fackes with endlefle riches fraught unto the battlement to be upbrought, and poured forth over the caftle wall, that fhe might win fome time, though dearely bought, whileft he to gathering of the gold did fall. But he was nothing moved, nor tempted wherewithal, but ftill continued his aflault the more, and layd on load with his huge iron flaile, that at the length he has yrent the dore, and made way for his maister to affaile, who being entred, nought did then availe, for wight againft his powre themfelves to reare. Each one did fly, their hearts began to faile, and hid themselves in corners here and there, and eke their dame, half dead, did hide herfelfe for feare. Long they her sought, yet no where could they find her, that fure they weend fhe was efcapt away. But Talus, that could like a limehound wind her, and all things fecret wifely could bewray, at length found out whereas fhe hidden lay under an heap of gold. Thence he her drew by the faire lockes, and foully did array, withouten pitty of her goodly hew, that Artegall himfelfe her feamelefle plight did rue. Yet for no pitty would he change the courfe of juftice, which in Talus hand did lie, who rudely haled her forth without remorfe, Still holding up her fuppliant hands on high, and kneeling at his feet submiflively. But he her fuppliant hands, thofe hands of gold, and eke her feet, thofe feet of filver trie, which sought unrighteoufnefle and juftice fold, chopt off, and nailed on high, that all might them behold. Herfelfe then tooke he by the flender waist, in vaine loud crying, and into the flood over the caftle wall adowne her caft, and there her drowned in the dirty mud. But the ftream wafht away her guilty blood. Thereafter all that mucky pelfe he tooke, the fpoile of peoples evill gotten good, the which her fire had fcrapt by hooke and crooke, and burning all to afhes, powred it downe the brooke. And laftly all that caftle quite he raced, even from the fole of his foundation, and all the hewen ftones thereof defaced, that there mote be no hope of reparation, nor memory thereof to any nation. All which when Talus thoroughly had performed, Sir Artegall undid the evill fafhion and wicked cuftomes of that bridge reformed, which done, unto his former journey he returned. In which they meafured mickle weary way, till that at length nigh to the fea they drew, by which as they did travell on a day, they faw before them, far as they could view, full many people gathered in a crew, whofe great affembly they did much admire, for never there the like refort they knew. So towards them they coafted, to enquire what things fo many nations met did there defire. There they beheld a mighty Gyant ftand upon a rock, and holding forth on high an huge great paire of ballance in his hand, with which he boafted in his furquedry, that all the world he would weigh equally, if ought he had the fame to counterpoife. For want whereof he weighed vanity, and filled his ballance full of idle toyes, yet was admired much of fooles, women, and boyes. He said, that he would all the earth uptake, and all the fea divided each from either, so would he of the fire one ballance make, and one of the aire, without or wind or weather. Then would he ballance heaven and hell together, and all that did within them all containe, of all whofe weight he would not miffe a feather. And looke what furplus did of each remaine, he would to his owne part reftore the fame againe. For why, he faid, they all unequall were, and had encroched upon others fhare, like as the fea, which plaine he fhewed there, had worn the earth, so did the fire the aire, so all the reft did others parts impaire. And so were realmes and nations run awry, all which he undertooke for to repaire, in fort as they were formed anciently, and all things would reduce unto equality. Therefore the vulgar did about him flocke, and clufter thicke unto his leafings vaine, Like foolifh flies about an honey crocke, In hope by him great benefit to gaine, And uncontrolled freedome to obtaine. All which when Artegall did fee and heare, How he misled the fimple peoples traine, In disdainefull wize he drew unto him neare, And thus unto him fpake, without regard or feare. Thou that presumest to weigh the world anew, And all things to an equall to reftore, Inftead of right, me feemes great wrong doft fhew, And farre above thy forces pitch to foare. For ere thou limit what is lefle or more In every thing, thou oughteft firft to know What was the poife of every part of yore, And looke then how much it doth overflow, Or faile thereof, fo much is more then juft to trow. For at the firft they all created were In goodly meafure, by their Makers might, And weighed out in balances fo neare, That not a dram was miffing of their right. The earth was in the middle centre pight, In which it doth immovable abide, Hemmed in with waters like a wall in fight, And they with aire, that not a drop can flide, All which the heavens containe, and in their courfes guide. Such heavenly juftice doth among them raine, That every one do know their certain bound, In which they do thefe many yeares remaine, And mongft them all no change hath yet been found. But if thou now fhouldft weigh them new in pound, We are not fure they would fo long remaine. All change is perilous, and all chance unfound. Therefore leave off to weigh them all againe, Till we may be assured they fhall their courfe retaine. Thou foolifh elfe, faid then the Gyant wroth, See'ft not how badly all things prefent be, And each eftate quite out of order goeth? The fea it felfe doft thou not plainely fee Encroach upon the land there under thee, And the earth it felfe how daily it's increaft, By all that dying too it turned be? Were it not good, that wrong were then furceaft, And from the moft, that fome were given to the leaft? Therefore I will throw downe thefe mountains high, And make them levell with the lowly plaine. Thefe towring rocks, which reach unto the sky, I will thruft downe into the deepeft maine, And as they were, them equalize againe. Tyrants, that make men fubject to their law, I will fupprefle, that they no more may raine, And lordings curbe, that commons overawe, And all the wealth of rich men to the poore will draw. Of things unfeene, how canft thou deeme aright? Then answered the righteous Artegall, Sith thou misdeem'ft fo much of things in fight. What though the earth with waves continuall Do eat the earth? It is no more at all. Ne is the earth the lefle, or loseth ought. For whatsoever from one place doth fall, Is with the tide unto another brought. For there is nothing loft, that may be found, if fought. Likewife the earth is not augmented more By all that dying into it do fade. For of the earth they formed were of yore. However gay their bloffome or their blade Do flourifh now, they into duft fhall vade. What wrong then is it, if that when they die, They turn to that, whereof they firft were made? All in the powre of their great Maker lie, All creatures muft obey the voice of the Moft High. They live, they die, like as he doth ordaine, Ne ever any asketh reafon why. The hills do not the lowly dales difdaine, The dales do not the lofty hills envy. He maketh kings to fit in sovereignty, He maketh fubjedts to their powre obey. He pulleth downe, he fetteth up on high, He gives to this, from that he takes away. For all we have is his, what he lift doe, he may. Whatever thing is done, by him is done, ne any may his mighty will withftand, ne any may his foveraine powre fhun, ne loose that he hath bound with ftedfaft band. In vaine therefore doeft thou now take in hand To call to count, or weigh his works anew, Whofe councels depth thou canft not underftand. Sith of things fubject to thy daily vew Thou doeft not know the caufe, nor their courfes dew. For take thy ballaunce, if thou be fo wife, And weigh the wind, that under heaven doth blow, Or weigh the light, that in the eaft doth rife, Or weigh the thought, that from mans mind doth flow. But if the weight of thefe thou canft not fhow, Weigh but one word, which from thy lips doth fall. For how canft thou thofe greater fecrets know, That doeft not know the leaft thing of them all? Ill can he rule the great, that cannot reach the fmall. Therewith the Gyant, much abafhed, fayd, That he of little things made reckoning light, Yet the leaft word, that ever could be layd Within his ballaunce, he could weigh aright. Which is, fayd he, more heavy then in weight, The right or wrong, the falfe, or elfe the trew. He anfwered, that he would try it ftreight. So he the words into his ballaunce threw, But ftreight the winged words out of his ballaunce flew. Wroth wext he then, and faid, that words were light, Ne would within his ballaunce well abide. But he could juftly weigh the wrong or right. Well then, faid Artegall, let it be tryde. Firft in one ballaunce fet the trew afide. He did fo firft, and then the falfe he layd In the other fcale. But ftill it downe did flide, And by no meane could in the weight be stayd. For by no meanes the falfe will with the truth be weighed. Now take the right likewife, faid Artegall, And counterpoife the fame with fo much wrong. So firft the right he put into one fcale, And then the Gyant ftrove with puissance ftrong To fill the other fcale with fo much wrong. But all the wrongs, that he therein could lay, Might not it pize. Yet did he labour long, And swat, and chaft, and proved every way, Yet all the wrongs could not a little right downe lay. Which when he faw, he greatly grew in rage, And almoft would his ballaunces have broken. But Artegall him fairely gan affwage, And faid, Be not upon thy ballaunce wroken, For they do nought but right or wrong betoken. But in the mind the doome of right muft be, And fo likewife of words, the which be spoken. The eare muft be the ballaunce, to decree And judge, whether with truth or falfhood they agree. But fet the truth, and fet the right afide, For they with wrong or falfhood will not fare. And put two wrongs together to be tryde, Or elfe two falfes of each equall fhare, And then together do them both compare. For truth is one, and right is ever one. So did he, and then plaine it did appeare, Whether of them the greater were atone. But right fat in the middeft of the beame alone. But he the right from thence did thruft away, For it was not the right which he did feeke, But rather ftrove extremities to weigh, Th' one to diminifh, the other for to eke. For of the meane he greatly did misleeke. Whom when so lewdly minded Talus found, Approaching nigh unto him cheeke by cheeke, He fhouldered him from off the higher ground, And downe the rocke him throwing, in the fea him drowned. Like as a fhip, whom cruel tempeft drives Upon a rock with horrible difmay, Her fhattered ribs in thoufand pieces rives, And fpoiling all her geares and goodly ray, Does make herfelfe misfortunes piteous prey. So downe the cliffe the wretched gyant tumbled, His battered balances in pieces lay, His timbered bones all broken rudely rumbled. So was the high afpiring with huge ruine humbled. That when the people, which had thereabout Long waited, faw his fudden defolation, They gan to gather in tumultuous rout, And mutining to ftirre up civill faction, For certain lofle of fo great expectation. For well they hoped to have got great good, And wondrous riches by his innovation. Therefore refolving to revenge his blood, They rofe in armes, and all in battell order stood. Which lawlefle multitude him coming to In warlike wize, when Artegall did vew, He much was troubled, ne wift what to doe. For loath he was his noble hands t'embrew In the bafe blood of fuch a rafcall crew. And otherwife, if that he fhould retire, He feared leaft they with fhame would him purfew. Therefore he Talus to them fent, t'inquire The caufe of their array, and truths for to defire. But foone as they him nigh approaching spide, They gan with all their weapons him affay, And rudely ftruck at him on every fide. Yet nought they could him hurt, ne aught difmay. But when at them he with his flaile gan lay, He like a fwarme of flies them overthrew. Ne any of them durft come in his way, But here and there before his prefence flew, And hid themfelves in holes and bufhes from his vew. As when a faulcon hath with nimble flight Flowne at a flufh of ducks forby the brooke, The trembling fowle, difmayd with dreadfull fight Of death, the which them almoft overtooke, Do hide themfelves from her aftonying looke, Amongft the flags and covert round about. When Talus faw they all the field forfooke, And none appeared of all that rafcall rout, To Artegall he turned, and went with him throughout. End of Canto 2, Book 5. The Legend of Artegall.